We're in a 2020 Nissan NV. We're going to go ahead and put a plug-and-play remote starter in. We're going to get started with a disassembly. I'm going to remove this access panel cover. Remove the Phillips screw. I'm going to remove a Phillips screw from behind the hood release. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the door gasket out a little bit. And we're going to apply outward pressure to remove the lower part of the dash. We're going to unplug any electrical plugs we have going to the switches on the dash. We're going to release the diagnostic plug by pushing the ears in on both sides while pushing back on the plug to remove it from its mounting bracket. We can remove the hood release cable from its holder by pushing the two ears on each side in, sliding it back, and then pulling the end of the cable out of the release lever. We've released it from its bracket. Now we're going to release it from the hood release lever. We're going to remove the driver's kick plate. Now we have the kick plate loose, so we're going to take off the kick panel, and we can sneak the kick panel out because the kick plate is loosened up. I'm going to remove the kick panel. I'm going to apply outward pressure, unsnap the clips. Set the e-brake, give us a little bit more room. And we're going to sneak the kick panel out. We're going to remove the 10mm screws from the protection plate. We're going to unplug the ignition switch to the vehicle. And we're going to unplug the immobilizer plug from the immobilizer of the vehicle. We're going to plug our ignition plug from our T-harness into the back of the ignition switch. Going to make sure it locks. And we're going to plug the wire we pulled from the ignition switch into the other side of the T-harness. And we're going to make sure that plug locks also. We're going to ground our system to the small 8mm screw on the side of the fuse box. We're going to install our diagnostic plug T-harness. We're going to locate the end on our diagnostic T-harness that matches the diagnostic plug that we removed from the plastic housing in the lower dash. We're going to go ahead and we're going to plug into the diagnostic plug. Now the diagnostic plug on our T-harness is the diagnostic plug we will mount back to the lower dash when we reassemble the vehicle. The harness that comes from the diagnostic plug T-harness will go to the module. So this NV does not have an immobilizer. One way you can tell is to pull this ring off. With the ring off, look at the ignition barrel. If there's no transponder ring, then you do not have an immobilizer. There are two methods of programming that will be used, and it will depend on whether or not you have an immobilizer. If your NV has an immobilizer, then you will use the immobilizer plugs on the T-harness. If you do not have an immobilizer, you will not use the immobilizer plugs on the T-harness. So if you have an immobilizer, you'll see the ring when you take off the outer ring and look at the ignition switch, and then you'll see that you'll have a plug in this area right here for your immobilizer T-harness. So this is the release clip. We're pressing down here to release it. Plug goes in this way with the clip facing the driver's side. First, we're going to plug in the immobilizer. So we're going to plug our immobilizer plug, which is identical to the plug we removed, into the vehicle's immobilizer. Now we're going to plug the plug we removed from the immobilizer into the other side of the T-harness. We're going to make sure all plugs snap and lock in firmly. Now when you get to the end, programming will depend on whether or not you have an immobilizer. So you're going to want to select the proper procedure for programming. We're going to install our secondary harness. The secondary harness has the immobilizer plug on it, and it also has a harness with 3 wires. A violet with a white stripe, and an orange wire. We're going to run this down into the driver's kick panel. We're going to parallel our harnesses. This is where we make both harnesses equal lengths. So we have the secondary harness. We're going to go ahead and we're going to run the primary harness across here. We're going to use 2 zip ties right here so we can zip it to this metal without actually pulling it against the metal. So we have our harnesses the same length. We've rolled up whatever is longer so that basically we're end up with the 2 plugs and they're even with each other, so we plug them into the module and we don't have problems. We're going to run this back up through here when we're done, so we have plenty of wire to mount the unit when we're done, and we're keeping things neat as we go. We're in the driver's kick panel. We're going to be making connections at this plug right here. We're going to go ahead, we're going to unplug the plug, and we're going to get rid of some of this loom so we can get at the wires. So we're just going to make a slice with a razor knife. We're only going to use the tip of the blade. It's that much. We don't want to cut the wires, we just want to cut through the loom. Let's use a very little bit of the blade. I'm going to get rid of this. This way we can make our connections comfortably. So we're going to look at the back of the plug where the wires enter. We're going to be dealing with wires on this side of the plug. I'm going to give you close-ups and we're going to make our connections. So if you look at the schematic that it comes with, we have an either-or scenario for arm and disarm and lock and unlock, depending on whether or not your vehicle has a contents alarm. I'm going to show you how to test for a contents alarm. We're outside of the vehicle with the hood closed and all the doors closed to the vehicle. If you don't have everything closed, the test is not valid. We have the driver's window rolled down. We're going to go ahead, we're going to lock the vehicle with our remote. Now, if you don't have a remote, more than likely you don't have an alarm. So if you have keyless entry, we're going to lock the doors with the remote. We're going to wait about 1 to 2 minutes. Our 1 to 2 minute wait has expired. We're going to reach through the window and we're going to throw the lock and unlock the doors. We're not going to use a switch. We're going to just throw the lock switch over to unlock, and then we're going to open the door. If the alarm doesn't go off, there is no alarm. If an alarm goes off, then you're going to make the connections on the diagram shown for vehicles with an alarm. So if you do not have an alarm, we're going to be using the gray wire as our lock wire, located right here, the gray wire, and we're going to use the red wire as our unlock wire. There is no disarm, so we will not make a disarm connection. If your vehicle has an alarm, then you are going to use different wires. You're going to use the light blue wire as your lock or arm wire. So that would be the light blue wire located right here. Okay, that would be lock or arm. The red is always going to be unlock. And then your disarm wire will be the yellow wire right here. So the disarm would be the yellow wire. And you can look at your guide that comes with the system, and it's going to show you the pin locations, so you can use pin location and color to make sure you're on the right wire. I don't see any duplicate colors except for the light blue on the end, so that's not used. So it's this light blue right here, right here. So again, we're going to use a PosiTap connector to make our connections. PosiTap connector has three pieces. First piece we're going to unscrew is the bottom piece that has a groove in it. The piece that it screws into has a needle. We're going to put this around our target wire and we're going to screw it back together. We've applied our taps to our lock and unlock wires. We're going to make our connections at the PosiTaps. We have our three wires for our lock harness here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove a 1/4 inch of insulation from our lock wire, which is violet. We're going to go ahead and we're going to loosen the collar on the first PosiTap. The collar's on the end. We're going to loosen it about 1 turn. We're going to put our incoming wire in. It'll bottom out. We're going to push it in. It'll go in deeper, and then we'll tighten the collar and give it a pull test. Going to repeat that for our unlock wire. And you will use the same procedure for your arm and disarm if you have the alarm. So we may break the listings up and make them specifically for okay, both of our connections are made. Now if you have the disarm wire, this would go to the yellow wire, and if you had the alarm, you wouldn't be locking with the gray, you would be locking with the light blue. After you make the lock and unlock connections, don't forget to plug the plug back in. If you don't plug the plug back in, the door locks will not respond. We're going to pair our device. We're going to locate the program button on the module. We're going to hold the program button down while we insert the 6-pin power plug. The LED lights on the front are going to begin to cycle. We want to release when we have a solid blue light. Release the button. We're going to plug in the remaining connectors. We're going to plug the 20-pin in from our secondary harness. We're going to plug in the small white plug from the diagnostic plug T harness. And if we have the Immobilizer, we're going to plug in the red plug from the Immobilizer harness. We're going to place the key in the ignition and turn the ignition to the run position. When we do this, the light's going to turn off. It's going to turn back on and flash rapidly. This is an indication that programming is complete. If you have Immobilizer plugs on your vehicle and you're using Immobilizer, I'm going to patch in programming of a NIS 5 vehicle. That's the harness part number that this uses, that has an Immobilizer, so you can follow that programming, but it will be on a different vehicle. I'm going to begin by locating the 6-pin power plug and the program button on the top of the Evo. We're going to press and hold the program button down while we plug in the 6-pin plug. When we do this, the blue, red, and yellow lights are going to begin to alternate. We want to release when we have a solid yellow light. So we're going to plug in the 6-pin. The lights will begin to cycle. We have a yellow light, we release the button. If we continue to hold the button down, the lights will continue to cycle. So if you don't let up on yellow, if you keep the button down and you go past the yellow light, you will come back around to yellow. You can release on the second time the light is yellow. If you release on any other color, you can also unplug the plug and redo the procedure. Keep in mind, only program the device once. If everything goes the way it goes in this video, the device is programmed. If you have an issue with it remote starting from that point on, then there is another issue. It's not the programming. Common mistake is people program the device over and over thinking that it did not program correctly when there are other issues going on, and they lock up the device. The device is locked up when the light illuminates red and only red and will not cycle, will not do anything but go red when you apply power. So we want to avoid this. If this happens, it has to be connected to a flash link and reset. So now we're going to locate the 20-pin plug on our secondary harness. We're going to plug our 20-pin plug in. Now we're going to plug our red plug in on our secondary harness. And then we're going to plug in our white plug that comes from our diagnostic plug connection. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug the white plug into our device also. While we're plugging in the plugs, we want to be careful not to push that button again. If we push the button again while we're plugging in the plugs, you have to go back to the beginning steps. So now that we have all the plugs plugged in, we're going to press and release the button 2 times. Press release, press release. Our yellow light's going to blink. It's time to put the key in the ignition and turn it to run. We don't want to just turn it 1 click to accessory, and we don't want to start it. We want to turn it 2 clicks to the run position. 1, 2. The dash lights will come on like you're going to start the vehicle. Now, if the light stays yellow like this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut the key off, remove it, put it back in the ignition, and turn it back 2 clicks. The light will come on red. A lot of times it does this the first time, but if it doesn't, you do exactly what I did. You remove the key, put it back in, turn it back on. Now we're going to turn the key off, and then we're going to turn the key back to the run position. Our lights are going to begin to alternate. We're going to wait for a solid yellow light. It can take up to 2 minutes. We have a flashing yellow light indicating our module has completed the programming process. We can now shut the key off and remove it from the ignition. At this point, we can test our system. The optional parking light connection is made in the driver's A-pillar right here. There's a harness that runs up in the back here that has a wire in it that will activate the parking lights. We're going to pop the 2 caps open right here. They pick right up right here on this edge. Take out the 2 10mm. With the handle removed, we can pop the trim off. And we can remove it. Now we're going to be working with the harness right here. Okay, so you see where I am down in the A-pillar here. Our wire is this red wire right here. Now there's multiple red wires, or one that appears to be close to red. It looks a little orange. A few heavy gauge wires in here too, so you want to be careful not to slice in deep when you lance the tape. It has to be done here. It can't be up here at the plug. This is the wire, and you have to test the wire. I'm going to show you how to test. So I'm going to turn the parking lights on from the switch. I'm going to test the wire. I'm going to put my test light on it, probe the wire with a grounded test light. It's going to illuminate. I'm now going to shut the parking lights off. Now you may be able to do this if you're not holding a tablet and just turn it on and off and see the light go on and off. I have to do it this way because I'm holding the tablet. So I turn the switch off and I'm testing and I have nothing. So this is the parking light wire. You must test. It's red. There are other red wires in here, and it has to be done right here up in the A-pillar. There is no shortcut. I will either send a T-tap or a blue posi tap for this connection. Another connection point is down in the driver's kick panel. This is the door pin wire. It's just light blue wire located right here on this plug in the driver's kick panel. We're going to connect the dark blue from our device to the light blue wire. To install the antenna, we're going to remove the cover from the two-sided tape. We're going to position the antenna about an inch down from the headliner, about here, and we're going to stick it to the window. We're now going to pull down on the headliner with our fingers. Actually, this has a plastic trim, and we're going to get the wire up in here. We're going to kind of feed it up so it goes far back as we can get it. We don't want it falling out. We're going to go all the way over to the corner here. Let's turn this a little bit. And we're going to get it up behind here. Now we're going to put the A-pillar trim on. Don't zip tie around this. This is an airbag. So we're just going to go, if we want to zip tie to something, you can zip tie to the wiring harness back here. We're outside the vehicle with our RFK411 remote. To lock the doors, press the button 1 time. To unlock the doors, press the button 2 times. To start the vehicle, press and hold. Runtime is 15 minutes. To shut the engine off, press and hold.